It's a Friday. I'm Bill Zortman. It's your business. Ron Nelson, Nelson Commercial Real Estate, with us. And I see from his note sent at 8:37 this morning, I should be able to come into the studio. We're going to talk about some amazing national statistics that might help us feel better about how real estate may do should there be a downturn. Should there be? I think it seems like all the talk now is everybody's just waiting for this big black cloud to open up and whatever comes out of it. And so what would come out of it? You've been doing this for a number of years. When they start fearing the worst, the sky falling, does it fall? Well, the good thing is it falls, but in Sioux Falls, we have had a very soft landing in, goodness, probably the last 5 of these. Each one is different, and we've just got such great fundamentals in our marketplace, and yet we're still conservative. There's a lot of aggressive things that have been happening in this town. But in terms of just fundamentals, we don't get our tail hanging out there too far to where you're vulnerable, And so for, different property people, this is a show about commercial real estate and property and advice on, what to do in multiple scenarios that you might find yourself in or our listeners might find themselves in. We've got listeners that own property, so we try to provide some guidelines and advice for them. We've got people that are looking for property, whether it's for a new store, a new office building. There's investors that like this town and think, this might not be a bad place to invest in our economy. So we try to console and talk to and provide advice for folks in each of those categories. So clearly the black cloud, everybody says it's coming. The stock market tanked last week, and all the purveyors of bad news are going, oh good, it's finally here. You almost feel like that. It's like they're just licking their chops waiting for bad news. And my stockbroker friend on the golf course this week told me that it's bounced back about 60%. Something like that. Don't quote me. I'm not a stock guy, but the big fear that everybody had last week with stock market dropping, maybe not that big of a fear after all. But Wall Street is just so herky-jerky that it reacts to, a lot of things. So, but here's some statistics that I was amazed by that would, at least it's interesting stuff to note. If you're a landlord of retail space especially, it's great news. If you're a tenant looking for space, it's maybe a cautionary note, and this is going to be kind of counter to what everybody is hearing out in the marketplace. But, Bill, we talk about the Amazon effect a lot, and how far it affects or what effects and impacts it has on brick and mortar stores. Again, the pundits of doom like to say brick and mortar as we know it is going to be doomed, but you haven't doomed it yet. Well, when you hear this, you'll see why. In 2019, more than 5 retail chains are opening for every retailer that's closing, for every retail chain that's closing. So what's happening in all this is kind of, my take on it, because it's interesting to read facts, but it's more interesting to try to explain them sometimes. And I think the explanation is we've been hearing about, the Amazon effect for years. We've been hearing about, just the impact that it's going to have on space. And what it's happening, I think people are figuring it out and adjusting accordingly. And they're saying, there's some things that work better online, some things that work better in bricks and mortar, and a lot of things, work better in both. Omni or multi-channeling or something to that effect is the industry term now. And so, stores are just figuring it out despite this black cloud coming and all that, supposedly. 5-1 opening versus closing in 2019 for retail chains. So, that's pretty, I thought, a startling statistic. And like I said, if you are looking for space, we think people say, my gosh, there's a lot of space out there on the market. There's a lot of signs, and all that. Our town's doubled in the last 30 years. All we've really done is kept up, at least on a per capita basis. All right. Let's kind of think like the listener right now. You just said 5-1 as far as opening and closing. Yeah. Is there a trend with those 5, the kind of businesses they are, who they're appealing to the most? Is that the reason this group thinks they can do better than the group that just folded.
Well, again, I can't categorize that by, a trend in terms of, these types of
But it's
stores.
a different way of thinking. They obviously think they can succeed.
Well, so to answer that question, trends, there's certain categories that, do pretty well on the internet. Apparel, that industry has been rocked by the Amazon effect. And yet, there's still, I don't buy a lot of clothes online. I've done it a couple of times. They don't fit right. Boxing them up and sending them back to me, what a pain in the butt. Plus, I like to do business locally.
Can be pain
when
other
I can.
places, too.
And, lots of different places. So, I think that's what I'm saying. I think the industry is maturing, with the internet and the Amazon effect to where we're figuring it out, and like I said, figuring out the categories that work better, with that combination of bricks and mortar, and they're coming back. So, that's kind of how to answer that question. Hopefully, you
get a pass.
So, looking at Sioux Falls, a couple weeks ago, I know we talked about 41st Street. I still say, we've got Louise, we've got Minnesota and all that, but day in and day out, all those streets, but specifically 41st Street.
Because of the mall? And
well,
what else?
Here's what I tell people. I mean, there is suburban opportunities. You got your every little pocket of the corner of the city, 57th and Western, 69th and Louise, 26th and Sycamore, 26th and Marion Road, 26th and T. Ellis Road. All those are great locations for the certain type of category. I placed a business here a few weeks back on 41st Street. And what I was telling them, because they're asking these same questions, and so I never answer for people when they say, where should I go? All I do is provide statistics and facts to just say, look at it this way. If you want to locate on the east side is great, and there's a lot of opportunity there. But if you're a mass appeal merchant and you live on the west side, and if a consumer lives on the west side, chances are they're not ever going to see your store, because you're on the opposite side of town that they don't get to. However, the guy on the west side is going to be on 41st Street, 3 times a week, probably minimum? The guy on the east side, the guy on the south side, the guy on the north side, they're all going to come back to that central convergence point of retail. So if you're a type of business, and especially depending on how many locations you want to have, especially if you're doing one location, you might want to be where the entire city is potentially going to be exposed to you on a more regular basis than some of these pockets, on different parts of town. And again, not knocking them, certainly tremendous opportunity in most of those pockets. But, if you want to be exposed to most of the population of our city and the visitors, 41st Street is day in and day out going to be the biggest workhorse of, properties out there. Gilrich Mall, just give an example, a local example. Gilrich Mall 1, they spent quite a bit of money. I don't know the dollar figure, not really relevant. But anyway, they're just freshening that property up. It's like 30-year-old property. And so, over time, it's kind of like, we could put probably a little fresh coat of upgrade on that property. And for that reason, they had some vacancy, just because it was kind of a mess, for a while. But literally, I say 2 leases done this week. One for sure. I'm bringing them an offer myself on one of the properties today, actually. And so one closed. They had a massage place that closed on that center, but 2 are opening, so that's the right trend. Down 1, up 2. And so just a fresh example that are, happening right in our town here. But again, it's on that workhorse street, that 41st Street. So there's been some changes. There's been some turnover, and there are some signs of, quite a few opportunities. But you drill it down and you say, well, I need this much space and this kind of exposure and yada, da, 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 da. And oh my gosh, there's going to be plenty of opportunities. Not true. It's tighter than you think. So that's what we're here for. That's as brokers, we kind of help sort that out. But the takeaway on all that, and I'm going to jump to another category if we have
about a minute,
a couple moments. But the takeaway on all this is just, if you're looking for space, The building, has slowed. I mean, we're still building new centers, but, builders are recognizing that
they can't do everything.
Well, and, that Amazon effect has got some people spooked a little bit, so they have slowed the pace of new construction. And so it's catching up. If you own property and have vacancies, the market is there. That's the good news. So get ready, fix your property up. It's not like shooting fish in a barrel. You still have to do the fundamentals, clean it up like Gilrich did, and, the results can be good.
All right. So how do they find you?
We're Nelson Commercial Real Estate, or on the web, N Commercial for short, and that gets you all the vitals with our phone numbers and ways to reach us.
30 seconds to chase you out of here.
Well, pizza category.
No, it's going to be my question.
Your question. Okay.
We'll talk pizza next week.
Okay.
We're going to be at the Symetra next week, so we can do that. As we go from summer to fall, what do you see this fall as far as Sioux Falls, what you're doing? You got something that you're delivering today. You're going to see that kind of active business this fall?
We are back to school as of yesterday, at least for the public schools, and so it's definitely a mindset shift. And we kind of say, it's kind of scramble time for us until we kind of get into that holiday mindset. Summer, for some, kind of a slack-off time, a little harder to find some folks vacationing and all that. So I think it's going to be a massive just lots of activity in our market between now and November. Guys, in some cases, some retailers were still scrambling with a few, trying to get open to catch that holiday rush. And there's still time. It's tight. It's really close. But, it's just, I guess my answer is it's going to be robust, I think, the rest of the year.
Ron Nelson this morning, for those that can't see him, very animated with his hands. He was really explaining the difference and what he's doing.
Sometimes I bump the microphone, you
did well this morning.
Yeah.
Then you ruined it.
Yeah. At least I'm not spilling the coffee on your lap from getting too animated.
There you go. Ron Nelson, appreciate you.
Thanks, Bill.